Today on the channel, I'm starting a brand new series called PayPal Request. If you're wondering what this is, a link is down below in the description box. Basically, if you wanted to ever wonder what I thought on a movie, you can click the link down below and you can request a movie for me to watch. Starting off this series, I've got to give a huge thank you to Jimmy at Scottish Geek Guy for requesting a movie, and he picked Judgment Night, which I've never heard of before. But without further ado, let's get into it. Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to the channel, whether you're new or returning. Really appreciate you tuning in as we talk about Judgment Night, which was picked by Jimmy, Scottish Geek Guy, whose link to his channel is actually down below in the description box. Really cool guy, got some really great solid content. Absolutely would love if you smash the subscribe button and check out his channel. But let's get into Judgment Night. Directed by Stephen Hopkins and starring Emilio Estevez, Cuba Gooding Jr, Jeremy Piven, Stephen Dorff, Denis Leary. Judgment Night tells the story of Frank and the guys go to a boxing match. On the way to the boxing match, they're stuck in traffic, so decide to go on a detour to try and get there a little bit quicker. However, they end up on the wrong side of town and actually become a witness to a murder. Now, the murderer, called Fallon, wants them dead as he doesn't want any witnesses to the murder that's just happened. I would like to say a huge thank you to all my awesome Patreons who helped to really support the channel. If you're interested in joining Patreon, and if you're interested in buying some merch or checking out my debut book, there is a link down below in the description box you can click where you can find all that good stuff. So going into this movie, I knew nothing about it except from reading that plot synopsis, and I saw the cast list. That's kind of about it. And just the synopsis alone, I was like, wow, this sounds really interesting. I found that it kind of comes around about an hour and 50 minute mark kind of movie. So wasn't really too long. As soon as I pressed play on this movie, I was glued for about 90% of this movie. I will start off and just go into some positives immediately and say that the premise alone is simple but effective. So the one thing I really liked about this is as soon as the moment of the movie starts, we get introduced to Frank, who is played by Emilio Estevez, who has a wife and a child. He is going to spend out some time with the guys. He hasn't been out for the past 3 months, of course, caring for a newborn baby along with his wife. As soon as we leave Frank, which already we know he's a family man, we start to get a bit more about, like, you know, his friendship with Mike and with John and with Ray, and you know, kind of what their friendship's around. They're going to have like a guys night out, so to say. And as soon as this guys night out starts, in the first 20 minutes, which builds up kind of some humor and some kind of like banter between the guys, that's when this movie really kicks off, and you really are kind of gunning for our heroes to get out of this escapade alive. But at the same time, Fallon, played by Denis Leary, is hot on their tails, and the suspense at times really had me going. I was like, wow, this Fallon is a piece of work to start with, which, you know, fair play to Denis Leary, with which is a really good performance for the material he's given. I will say this just from the get-go, the acting all around is pretty solid here. Everyone does a good performance. My standouts personally is definitely Denis Leary as Fallon, as I mentioned, and Cuba Gooding Jr as Mike. He definitely has the best lines in the movie, has the kind of the most heart. He also has the most kind of comedy lines here, which I did get a chuckle at. Whereas like each of our characters have different personality traits, which I think makes this work really, really well. And there is times when I say I was glued to my phone being like, wow, okay, like what's going to happen next? There's moments where there is absolute silence. You can hear a pin drop when our characters go into hiding, and you're hoping that Fallon doesn't find them, and you can feel that tension moment as there is some stakes behind this overall movie, because ultimately if these 4 guys get found, who ultimately just go on a night out to a boxing match, they're going to be dead. You know, Frank, who is a father, of course, recently to like a 3-month-old baby, he's not going to get back home. Therefore, you can feel for him because you're going to think, wow, well, he's going to lose his wife and child. And I say, I think this is all just helmed really well with the direction. But also, I will say that the cinematography adds a lot to this movie with multiple layers. So, for example, what I mean by that is the setting of this shows the kind of different classes of this entire city. So for example, like say like that the north side where the guys are from, and they kind of trail into the south side where of course Fallon and the gang is. There's two different lifestyles where people have money, they're in a nice house, they're living comfortably, whereas this gang leader is living in the rough and the squalor, so to say. And the contrast between the twos, even Fallon mentions quite a few times that you have no idea what it's like down here, you have no idea where you are right now, and this is different to where you're used to in your north side. Things are run differently here, and you can just sense that even in the cinematography, even without characters saying a single word. You can tell the differences with some nice tracking shots. There's definitely a big contrast between kind of like maybe a bit more of like a richer area and like a poorer area, and I really felt that throughout, which I think only kind of gets helmed even further by the music of Alan Silvestri. Now this guy is an absolute maestro with music soundtracks. I mean, heck, Back to the Future just to name one to start with. But Alan Silvestri's score, which I do believe he wasn't actually picked originally as the original composer, and this movie actually does have a little bit of a crazy backstory behind it and facts that happen behind the scenes of the movie that also makes this really interesting. And I know a lot of people have actually kind of grown to love this movie and it's kind of gained to have like a cult status. The music is really elevated in building this suspense, because you can have great cinematography, you can have good acting, but if the music is not right, it's going to eliminate any of that suspense. But thankfully, Alan Silvestri's score only just heightens up that suspense throughout the duration, and I really, really enjoyed that. I'm going to be honest, I haven't got many negatives, but I would say I've got about 2 negatives for me that ultimately stop this from being like an absolute masterpiece. But I will say just right at the bat, this is a movie that I would watch again. So my negatives here is, for the material they're given, the characters are good, but the characters could have had a little bit more development. Now what I mean by that is Fallon, for example, we know he is this criminal gang master, the ringleader, whatever terminology you want to use for him, but I would have liked a little bit more to his character. He's got a couple of goons working for him, but you don't really learn a lot about the goons. Not to say that you really need to, but I feel like if we just had a little bit extra substance to their characters, it would have really helped with the movie. And kind of going into like the end of the second act, going into the third act, even half of it, I would say the suspense is lost just a little bit, because this night continues to keep getting worse and worse for our gang. And as the night continues to get worse, at first there is just suspense after suspense moment, and moments where you are quiet, you want to keep quiet, moments where you want to shout at the screen. But I feel like it loses a little bit of that way towards the end of the third act, which ultimately kind of stopped it from, you know, being fully engrossable for me anyway, as I did feel myself losing a little bit of attention towards the end. But besides that, I actually really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a good time. Would I recommend it to watch it for you guys? Absolutely. I would definitely say to check it out if you get a chance to anyway. My overall score for Judgment Night is a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Have you seen this movie? Have you even heard of it? Let me know any and all comments down below. I also hope that you've enjoyed this review. If you have, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel by clicking the red button down below if you haven't already. And until the next time that I see you, I'll be seeing you later.